If you have not been able to see some of Tamil Nadu's ministers in the state secretariat or your local MLA in action in the constituency, chances are that you would likely spot them about 154 km north of Chennai in Vikravandi. Why are these elected representatives camping there? Vanakkam, this is T. Suresh Kumar. Thank you for joining me in this episode of the Hindu Focus Tamil Nadu. A battery of state ministers and scores of ruling party MLAs are camping in Vikravandi Assembly constituency where a bypoll is due on July 10th. Such deployment of men, machinery and money power has become a common feature in by-elections in Tamil Nadu over the past 2 decades or so. In fact, on account of such deployment of huge resources by the ruling party and its allies, oftentimes opposition parties have boycotted bypolls. Even in this by-elections, the AIADMK, the principal opposition party in Tamil Nadu, has decided to stay away. The party's leader Edapaddi Palaniswami has cited irregularities that were allegedly committed in the Erode East Assembly by-elections last year as the reason for boycotting the Vikravandi by-election. Most often, ruling parties consider a victory in assembly by-elections as the electorate's reiteration of faith in its governance, or they view it as some sort of a referendum on the government. Ironically, to ensure that the electorate backs them, often ruling parties have resorted to bribery of voters in different forms. While up until the 1990s this was not the case, since the early 2000s, Tamil Nadu has witnessed multiple by-elections where there has been either abuse of power or bribery of voters. In 2002, the Election Commission in fact was forced to postpone the by-elections to Sidapat and Vaniyampadi constituencies, citing widespread irregularities in addition and deletion of names of voters from the electoral roll. In fact, back then the Election Commission had even recommended stern action against the Chennai Corporation Commissioner for accepting bulk names for inclusion in the voter list well after the deadline passed. The ruling AIADMK at that time went on to win the by-elections in Sidapat and Vaniyampadi when they were eventually held. Subsequently, in 2003, the Sathankulam by-elections witnessed widespread bribery of voters. Back then, there were widespread reports of the AIADMK bribing voters in different forms. The voters received saris, cricket bats, volleyball, and t-shirts and other such goodies. Besides, the AIADMK had also funded the renovation of local temples and sanctioned water tanks and other facilities for the villagers in Sathankulam constituency. The DMK, which was the principal opposition party at that time, had boycotted the Sathankulam by-elections. One particular by-election that will stand out in the history of Tamil Nadu for its notoriety in bribing voters is the Tirumangalam by-election. In fact, bribery of voters in this constituency was on such a scale that this method that was deployed by the ruling DMK in the constituency came to be known as the Tirumangalam formula. The Tirumangalam formula essentially involved bribing each and every eligible voter in the constituency. So, irrespective of whether a voter wanted money or not, what the DMK allegedly did at that time was to slip currency notes in envelopes along with the morning newspaper to every voter. In fact, this was conceded by Patturajan, one of the DMK's key functionaries in Madurai, during a conversation with a US diplomat in Chennai. This admission by Patturajan of large-scale bribery of voters in Madurai's Tirumangalam constituency was documented by the diplomat in a cable sent to his country. This record came to light as part of the WikiLeaks documents much later. In fact, it showed that voters were bribed as high as 5,000 rupees per vote against the then going rate of rupees 500 per voter. Although this Tirumangalam formula was widely criticized by parties and stakeholders in the democratic process, the Election Commission was unable to prevent large-scale bribery of voters in the subsequent by-election in Pennagaram in 2010. Back then, the voters were incentivized in different ways, including by way of issue of tokens, using which they could go to the nearest petrol bunk and fill a liter of petrol, or have a meal in a restaurant, or even recharge their mobile phones. What cannot be overlooked is, although the ruling parties consider by-election victory as a referendum of sorts on their governance, in reality, in the general election, they are not able to sustain this sort of a victory. Both in Tirumangalam as well as Pennagaram, the DMK lost in the 2011 assembly elections. The Election Commission had also tried to unsuccessfully crack down on bribery of voters in general elections. For instance, in 2016, for the first time, the Election Commission, after noticing that money was being distributed to voters in Tanjavur and Aravakuruchi constituencies, it rescinded the election notification in these two constituencies. However, some months later, when the by-elections were held to these two constituencies, the same candidates against whom the EC had earlier passed indictment orders managed to win the elections. However, it is not always that ruling party candidates win by-elections. A most recent case which stands out in this connection is the RK Nagar by-elections, where TTV Dinakaran managed to win as an independent candidate in 2017. This seat had fallen vacant following Jayalalitha's death. Initially, TTV Dinakaran was fielded in the constituency as a candidate of the ruling AIADMK faction headed by Sashikala. At that point, following widespread discovery of bribery of voters, including a note seized by the income tax which showed records of possible distribution of money to voters, the election was deferred. But subsequently, when he contested as an independent, he managed to win the election on a big scale. While often senior politicians in Tamil Nadu privately lament that they are not able to contest elections because of the widespread use of money power, the reality remains that there is no change in this attitude of voter bribery. In fact, last year during the Erode East Assembly election, there were widespread allegations of a different kind against the DMK. The opposition had charged that the ruling party had given incentives to voters, kept them under a shamiana, taken care of their daily needs, and ensured that they went back to their houses only late in the evening, thereby preventing the opposition from meeting these voters and seeking their support. Such undue influence by ruling parties was not always the case in Tamil Nadu. In fact, in 1963, while the Congress was in power, the DMK had managed to win the Tiruvannamalai by-elections. Likewise, while the DMK was in power, the AIADMK had won the Dindigul parliamentary constituency in 1973 and subsequently it won a bypoll in Coimbatore West in 1974. Likewise, even when MGR was alive, his popularity was not enough to prevent the DMK from winning the 1984 by-elections in Annanagar and Mailadurai constituencies. In 1991, although Jayalalitha and the Congress had swept to a massive victory in Tamil Nadu following the assassination of former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, in the subsequent by-elections conducted to Harbour and Egmore constituency, the DMK's candidates had emerged successful. Unfortunately, that has not been the case in recent years, as we saw in some of the by-elections. The ruling party has often deployed most of its cabinet ministers and ruling party MLAs in these constituencies, thereby even preventing the day-to-day routine administration process. There are also different theories on the need for holding by-elections at all. In fact, in 1981, when the Tirupattur Assembly seat had fallen vacant following the death of the Congress I legislator, the then Chief Minister M.G. Ramachandran had argued that the party must be allowed to retain the seat. MGR's argument was that unless an election was set aside in a constituency by a court of law, the party which had won the seat in the general election must be allowed to retain it in the subsequent by-election should a vacancy arise. Going a step further, MGR had even advocated that the union government must amend the election rules to facilitate this process. This argument in later years found favour even with the Patali Makkal Katchi, which is contesting the Vikravandi Bypolls. The PMK leader Ramdas has often argued that it's a waste of resource to hold by-election when it's more or less a foregone conclusion that the ruling party will win it. He had also supported MGR's argument that the party which wins a seat in a general election must not be allowed to retain the same in subsequent years in case a by-election arose. For some years, in fact, the PMK had chosen to boycott all the by-elections. But this time, as I said, they are contesting in Vikravandi. Vikravandi, as we all know, is a one-year dominated constituency. It has a significant number of one-year voters. It also has significant number of Dalit voters there. This time, it's witnessing a triangular contest between the DMK, PMK and the Nam Tamil Katchi candidate. The Nam Tamil Katchi leader Seeman has appealed for support from the AIADMK and the DMK, but the two parties have not yet responded to his call. It remains to be seen if the Election Commission will succeed in holding a very fair and free by-election in Vikravandi, giving no room for any sort of allegations. Already there have been complaints from the PMK over the presence of ministers in the constituency. The media's focus has not been there because in neighbouring Kallakurchi, there have been 65 deaths owing to Hoosh tragedy. And only in the coming days, the focus is likely to be in Vikravandi, and we need to see whether voters get bribed on a massive scale as it had happened in the past few by-elections. Hopefully, the EC will be able to end this trend. So on that note, this is D. Suresh Kumar signing off. I shall meet you in another video. Thank you.